armoured made by Volvo as a two-part vehicle. Volvo up in Scandinavia, lots of lakes, lots of snow. How are you going to get across it? And the idea here is this very lightweight vehicle with wide rubber tracks distributes the weight very effectively over snow. And that series of vehicles has really been developed, and there was an armoured variant. Viking is certainly part of the same sort of family, different manufacturers, and that's being used now by the Royal Marines. They're based across the road from us here at Bovington in Stanley Barracks, Royal Marine Armoured Support Unit. And it's a way of doing a vehicle where the engine in the front, power is taken to turn those tracks in the rear, so you've actually almost got each track is being powered. And it can be used as to transport infantry, ammunition, load carrying. Again, very, very important for NATO at the time on what was called the northern flank. We, the Royal Marines, were going to go up there if war had been declared again in the Cold War, and they would be using vehicles like this. And of course, don't forget, the later variants were actually used out in the Falkland Islands to try and get supplies forward as well during the Falklands War. Behind that vehicle, odd-looking truck, this is the Buffel. This comes from South Africa. And again, at the time when sanctions were in place, what they did, they very sensibly got hold of component parts that they knew were readily available. So they got a Mercedes-Benz Univolt truck chassis and an engine from Mercedes, and built this armoured vehicle around it. And the whole idea of this was at the time when they were fighting counterinsurgency wars, your bigger threat came from mines. We call them IED now, really they've been around a long time. Mines is a perfectly acceptable word for an IED. And what they've done is to protect the driver and the infantry who are being carried in the back, they've made the vehicle higher off the ground. So again, the driver is not actually sitting directly over any of the wheel stations. So if that front wheel goes over a mine, first of all there's blast protection to vent the blast away, and he's nice and high up in his own little cab to hopefully mean that he survives. And again, in the back, facing outwards, there's a set of seats facing out each side, straps on those seats. Again, the South Africans learn that you need to be strapped in when you're driving around if you do go over a mine, because again you might survive the mine blast but then be killed by being flung from the vehicle. And you didn't actually have a door in the back there. You climbed up over the side of the vehicle to get in the rear seats, and the infantry could fire over the edge there. And again, the front cab has got some form of armoured glass to try and protect the driver. Again, another very odd looking vehicle behind, the Humber Hornet. Now the Humber Hornet was basically a Humber truck which was in British Army service. Siemens Toys used to make a lovely model of it. They took them into service again and armoured some of them. The famous Humber Pig that you saw in Northern Ireland was basically again a Humber truck with armour plate on the outside. And this version was to be parachuted with airborne troops, cluster of parachutes sent out the back of something like a Beverly aeroplane. And the idea was it might be able to give airborne troops some form of protection against armoured tanks. And how they did that, they fitted this vehicle, you can see on the back, 2 Malkara missiles. Now the Malkara was designed out in Australia, and those missiles have a 56-pound warhead. So basically if you manage to fire wire-guided that missile onto a target like a tank, it will pretty much just demolish any tank it hits. It's trying to get the actual missile onto the target, which wasn't easy. So again, being wire-guided, you've got to actually be in line of sight to see where the missile is going, and you have a little joystick to aim it, which takes a hell of a lot of skill to actually get that missile onto the target when it's in flight. You carry 2 spare missiles on the back, and it was manned by a Royal Tank Regiment. It was called the Airborne Squadron, and Cyclops is their badge is on the side of this particular vehicle. And we're very lucky, we've got 2 examples in the collection here, one we drive around, one that's inside the museum. We've also got some footage of one of these being dropped by Beverly down at Lulworth, just down the coast on the gunnery ranges. 2 of the parachutes failed to deploy, and this thing hurtles to the earth and smashes into the ground, and there's some footage of close up afterwards and then trying to pick the bits of it together again. Luckily the crew always jump separately. You never jump with the vehicle, which seemed a bit suicidal. Behind the Malcara vehicle we've got, again, something you may recognise, Stalwart. That was part of the same family of vehicles put together by Alvis. 6-wheeled, you saw them on the sounding armoured car a little bit earlier. Same Rolls-Royce engine in the front of the vehicle. This one though, you have a cab at the front there to carry 3 crew members. They enter through round hatches on the top of the vehicle, and the whole point of it, it's amphibious. You can carry supplies forward in the back of that vehicle up to about 5 tons of stores, and you can also pull behind you another 10 tons. So really, really useful all-terrain vehicle, and that amphibious capability caused the Army a little bit of problems one time. Famously, a slightly disgruntled soldier got hold of the Stalwart and tried to come back across the channel from the continent in a Stalwart. He didn't quite make it, much to Alvis's disgust. He was turned around and taken out the vehicle. Alvis would have loved the fact that that amphibious vehicle made it all the way across the English Channel. It has a tremendous capability, and again could carry infantry in the rear. If you were infantry, you always liked hanging around the back corner where the exhaust pipe was, and that kept you nice and warm if you were driving around on the North German plain. The last one in our little lineup at the moment, very odd looking vehicle. This is a test bed vehicle. It's not really, it was never meant to go into production at all. Here we sometimes call it the Tupperware tank. It's a plastic tank. It's called Advanced Composite Armoured Vehicle Platform, or AVCAT. And it was put together by DERA, Defence Evaluation and Research Agency, up at Chertsey. And it was at a time when we were looking at composites, plastics, laminates. Would they be as effective as main armour? And instead of bolting armour plates or welding it to a hull, that vehicle was actually moulded with a monocoque hull, and they used the engine for running gear from a Warrior to power it along. And on the top they put a turret from a Fox, the same sort of turret you saw on that Stalwart earlier on. And the idea being, it was to test out the feasibility of using plastics, not only for armour protection, but fuel for the whole vehicle. And again, there's still interest in this vehicle because, as you may know, the long-term polymers and plastic, some of you may have plastic models, but a long time ago, over time, they broke down over time. So what happens in the future is very interesting. One other great advantage, of course, of plastic is it doesn't shatter or if it's penetrated, the effects of penetrating round inside are very different than if it's inside a metal vehicle. And one thing you may notice in some of these armoured vehicles, they have what's called a fall liner. That's a liner of a different material to try and absorb heat and impact from things that could penetrate the outer neck. One of the big problems on the vehicle safety is for a hot inside, and that gets to the ammunition, you're in trouble. And famously the German in the Second World War, lots of fires were not to the earthquakes in the back, but because when they were penetrating, the ammunition went up in place. And as the war progressed, they came up with the idea of what they call wet stowing. But the round ammunition in a tank was surrounded by water, so when the round in the tank was penetrated, there was a less chance that ammunition round would actually catch fire. And certainly they discovered that the German tanks that had wet stowing were more likely to survive the penetration than you were during one of the earlier types of German tanks. So it was a very effective way of stopping fire in tanks. So there's some of our armoured personnel carriers, slight odd vehicles, things like Hornet there, driving around. What's been serviced in the back of the